Right. Kia ora, everyone. Good evening. My name is Derek. I'm a future student advisor at Massey University on the Wellington campus. Happy to be joined this evening by April Bennett, who is a lecturer for Māori Environmental and Resource Planning on the Palmerston North campus. Good evening, April. How are you? And we've also got Mahalia, who is a alum of Massey. She graduated from the BRP, Bachelor of Resource and Environmental Planning, and she has just moved to Wellington. So we're really pleased that she's taken that Mahali's taken the time to join us, because she's had a pretty full on last couple of days moving and shifting. So Mahalia, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We also have Julia, who is currently joining us from overseas. So we're just going through a few technical difficulties there with Julia, but Julia has studied the Masters of Resource and Environmental Planning, and she should be jumping on this chat tonight very shortly. We're just trying to get her face to come on screen so we can actually see Julia. And there she is.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Julia. It was perfect timing. Thank you for joining us. Sorry to throw you in the deep end. I've just been saying you've had a few technical difficulties. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Julia. How are you?
Good. Finally.
Good. And I understand you're joining us from, is it Germany?
I'm in Zurich at the moment. Yeah, so Switzerland.
Switzerland,
you
sorry.
see
Okay.
me? So my camera is,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, we
I
can
can't
see you.
see myself, so I'm checking that. Okay.
Thank you
Great.
so much for making time for us all the way over there in Zurich.
Yeah, it's very cold and it's still dark behind me. It's morning. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully, it's not too early in the morning.
Not too bad. 6.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that's about what time my kids wake me up. Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much, all of you for joining me. So the purpose of this evening is, we have people tuning in, listening, and watching, and they just want to hear more about what it's like to be studying Bachelor of Resource and Environmental Planning, or perhaps Masters of Environmental and Resource and Environmental Planning. We just want to kind of paint that picture a little bit more clearly. And it's one thing to see what you see on the website and to read about a program, but to actually hear from a few people who have studied the program is really quite valuable. So thank you, Julia and Mahalia, for joining us this evening. I'll just kind of start off with a few questions. This evening should be really informal. We just want to have fun and hear your stories. We want you to kind of talk about the experiences you've been through, both studying at Massey, but also both in your personal journeys. Julie, I had the pleasure of reading a little bit about you on the write-up, so that Deborah did. And yeah, that was incredible. Your background, the things that you studied. So yeah, anything that you can share that some of the people that are tuning in this evening and listening, that they can take with them to kind of decide whether or not that's something that they would want to look into in terms of area of study and where that can take you. If it's okay, first of all, April, I'm doing all the talking here. Would you just be able to start off by kind of just explaining what you teach, and also the two programs, the bachelor program and the master's program within Resource and Environmental Planning? Just a quick introduction to both of those programs.
Kia ora, I can do that. Tēnei e mahina kia koutou, e ngā mata kua huri ki tēnei pai. Greetings to everyone who have turned their faces to this platform tonight, ki te whakarongo kia tātou, to listen to us. Kia koe Derek, nā iwi tēnei wānanga I whakarite. Thank you for organising this hui. E aku mārei kura, e aku ika āwhiro, kōrua, ko Julia, ko Mahalia, tēnā kōrua. Kia koe tui, tā tātou, kai whakapai e purangi tēnā koe to Tui, who's our tech guy, kia ora Tui, and to Julia and Mahalia, our very special alumni and manuhiri. Joining us from Pōneke, Wellington is Mahalia and Julia from Zurich, tēnā kōrua. I'm the program coordinator for the Resource and Environmental Planning program. I teach into both the Bachelor of Resource and Environmental Planning degree, which is our undergraduate program, which Mahalia is a recent graduate from, and also into the Masters of Resource and Environmental Planning, which Julia is going to be a graduate from in May next year. And I see some people that I know on the in the lobby or in our room right now. So just want to say kia ora to Rama, beautiful Rama, who's just finished the first year of the BRP, and also to Bella, who is hopefully coming into the BRP next year. So just to give everybody a bit of an overview of the Bachelor of Resource and Environmental Planning first, and then Mahalia can talk to us about her lived experience of it, because from a program coordinator's point of view and from a lecturer's point of view, it's quite different to the student's point of view. And what we really want to do tonight is highlight for everybody the student's lived experience. But just to explain to those of you who are here to listen to the kōrero about the BRP is a 4-year degree. It's accredited by the New Zealand Planning Institute, as is the Masters of Resource and Environmental Planning. There are 31 papers, just have to make sure I've got my maths right. I'm not very good at maths. There are 20 compulsory planning courses, so 18 of those are planning courses specifically, and then there are another couple. So we have a compulsory Te Tiriti o Waitangi course, the Treaty of Waitangi and New Zealand Society, and also a compulsory geography course which focuses on GIS technologies. So there are 20 core planning courses that one has to complete when they're doing the Bachelor of Resource and Environmental Planning. A student, a tauira, also has to complete a minor. So that's 8 courses in another discipline. So most of our students take a geography minor, so they'll complete 8 geography papers in addition to the 20 core planning papers. And then they'll also take 3 elective courses. So it's a very structured degree, 20 core planning courses, 8 minor courses in a discipline that you choose. And we'll give you a little bit of guidance on that, just depending on what your strengths are, and then 3 electives over the 4 years. If you complete your degree with a B average plus, you can also graduate with honours at the end of the 4 years. So that's just an extra feather in your cap that you can carry out into the world with you when you go out into the profession. So that's the basic structure of the program. There are different streams in the program. So for example, there's a natural environment or a natural resource planning stream. There's also an urban planning stream. There's a professional practice stream, which is the work of the mahi of actually being a planner. And then there are theory and law streams, and also a te ao Māori stream. So there are these threads that run through the program that students develop skills and knowledge in. So that's the kind of sort of general structure and I suppose flavour of the BRP. Yeah, and perhaps Mahalia, would you like to have a bit of a kōrero about your lived experience of the program?
Sure, why not? Kia ora, April. Thank you for your introduction, and thank you to those Massey staff for facilitating this session for us. Tēnā koe Julia as well. And kia ora to our prospective students for coming along and listening. Much appreciated. Here ai no te awa wanganui me ngā rauru kītahi au. So I'm a person from Ngā Rauru Kītahi iwi and Te Awa Tupua, Wanganui iwi. I started the BRP, gosh, I started it about 12 years ago, I want to say. So I started it, in the early 2010s. And at that point in time, what sort of directed me there was I was working for a post-settlement governance entity in Ngā Rauru Kītahi, and I was just a receptionist at the time, really fresh-faced, and I noticed that we needed more expertise in environmental management and planning in that space. We didn't have it internally. So I saw the planning degree and I jumped it because it was just down the road from home too. So home is Wanganui, and then Palmerston North campus was just down the road. And that was close enough to Wānau so that I could have support, while also being far enough away so that I could have a life. And so I enrolled in the course, and yeah, and it was really interesting. Much the same kind of structure as it is now, actually, just different. Some courses have changed, April? Like, it really hasn't changed that, like, yeah, the structure hasn't changed that much. And I took up, I think I initially wanted to do a minor in politics and policy, but I think they got rid of that one. So I went into Māori studies, and I'm really grateful that I went into Māori studies, because I was one of the, has anyone else done a minor in Māori studies, April? I imagine a few have since, but no one at the time had.
Yeah, it's most of the students tend to take geography.
Yeah.
So, and there are a few more students who take the Māori studies minor.
Right.
But back when you had started Mahalia, you were probably the only one.
Yeah, and so like coming up to where, if you like later on, I'll explain how that's actually helped me a lot in terms of my career. It's a point of differentiation to not have done a geography minor, but at the same time, it's helped me kind of ground myself in Te Ao Māori principles and understand the history of Māori in New Zealand when I am considering planning as a professional. And that is a huge capability gap in the planning profession in general. So it's been enormously helpful. So it took me about 12 years. I was on and off studying part-time, I think I studied the first two and a half years. I did full-time, and then I became really sick. And I'm really open about dealing with mental illness, depression primarily. And so I went off and took care of myself, prioritized that, right? And then came back and forth, picking off papers here and there until I was done. And so in the interim, I rested and worked for iwi mostly. So I'd go back home to Wanganui, work for, I think I did a bit of work for our Māori health organisation there, which gave me another perspective of the sort of social issues that we deal with in Wanganui anyway, or for Māori. And then I worked again for Ngā Rauru Kītahi, but in across various projects, both in environmental space, economic development, education as well. So that kind of, as that went on, I decided over time that I wanted to return back to the planning degree. I did want to complete my planning degree and came back. I can't remember when I came back, actually. April might have been 2019-ish, I want to say, to complete it, and was studying part-time. During that journey, I was really lucky to have a lot of support from both Massey University counselling services. Just met some awesome counsellors there who were super supportive throughout the degree with the mental health aspect, but also from the staff in the planning degree as well. Or if I communicated, hey, I've got some issues here, I need a bit more time to do this, I'm struggling with that, they were really understanding and helpful. So I really appreciate that, because I don't know that I would have gotten through it without that support, in all honesty. Yeah, so that was kind of the abridged version of my journey. I enjoyed some of the papers. I didn't enjoy, if I'm going to be really honest, but I really enjoyed the urban planning papers. I really enjoyed those ones. I enjoyed the Māori planning papers. I enjoyed I actually really like the professional practice papers, because they give you an insight that you don't necessarily have until you go out to practice. And then even then you might not learn it, but there were some really core important things to learn for when you practice as a professional that I learnt in those papers. So those were great. The majority of the papers I liked. There were just one or two where I was like, meh, but that's study. That's study, eh? So it is what it is. I love the Māori studies papers, loved them, particularly the Māori research papers really broke down different epistemologies for me. So that was a really good way to introduce me into other ways of thinking outside of the sort of Western paradigms that we often kind of we grow up within, and that fed to us through the university. So it was great. It was good experience. Yeah. Julian? So,
yeah, no,
Liz?
definitely. But first of all, mahali, it sounds like an incredible journey that you've been through, the amount of mahi that you would have been putting in over that 12 years, and then, you know, being quite open about, you know, going through the issues and with anxiety and mental health, and that's such a huge piece these days for people, and facing that, and yeah, to overcome that and then makes to the finish line. Yeah. And now you're in Wellington, about to start your new job.
Yeah, ironically, not as a planner. I worked in, but that's the thing. I worked for Environment Canterbury for the last couple of years. Cut my teeth as a consents planner just so that I could understand the implementation aspect, or how things were implemented, before going into policy. And I'd always wanted to go into the policy space. So now I've moved from council to Te Arawati, who are the Crown, the Authority for Crown Māori Relations. And I'm working in the treaty settlements team. Yep.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Julia, you've been very patient there over in Zurich. Thank you, Mahali, for sharing. Julia, let's go ahead and get into your story a little bit. You studied a master's, is that right?
Yes.
And you've been studying in Taipei, Taiwan?
Yes.
Yeah, so just tell us a little bit about your background, because you've also studied a few different things. Some really, very interesting background. I'll just leave it to you.
Did you want April to introduce the master's course structure first, or do you want me to just?
Well, yeah, maybe we'll start with your story first.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So my story, it's quite complicated, but I basically left Aotearoa about 14 years ago. So I started at Massey in spatial design, and then I sort of just fell into the fashion industry, and continued working in that space for many years. And it wasn't until I met my partner and then my future wife that I decided to shift careers, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and I didn't know if I wanted to study. So I decided to just take on a diploma first. And that was a really good, because I hadn't studied for about 10 years, and coming from a design background, you're not sure if you want to get into the writing aspects of things, and you don't have that confidence with writing. Well, I didn't feel I did. So it was really good for me to kind of dabble in this studying again. And I did the diploma in development studies via distance, part-time. And that was when I first moved to Taipei, Taiwan. So my wife is Taiwanese, and we moved together from Vancouver. So we had been living in Canada. And it was really good. However, that wasn't quite where I saw myself ending up. So initially I had decided to do development studies, and then I was sort of figuring out what space I wanted to work in, what did I want to do, but I really loved the papers focused on urban environments, and particularly about the climate crisis and dealing with future planning scenarios. So, and kind of that big picture thinking I really liked as well. So I looked up, what is the career path that you sort of take, and then that led me to planning. And the Massey program was perfect because it was environmental resource planning, but at the same time there were papers focused on urban environments, and I'm very interested in cities, having lived in many big cities. And so I in 2020 was when I started the masters, and that was quite epic to start that and at the same time have the pandemic happen. So it ended up being it was quite full on. I had the same sort of issues with mental health. It was a lot of like, there was isolation involved with, Taipei was kind of like Aotearoa, I guess. We didn't have those severe lockdowns, but at the same time, you had places that you would usually go to study, like cafes and libraries that were not as accessible. And then also, I'm in a foreign country, in a foreign city. My Mandarin is okay, but yeah, I think it was a difficult journey. I had the same as Mahalia, like I also enjoyed some papers, I didn't enjoy other papers. So for example, I found law very difficult. It's like a different way of thinking, and I had never kind of had to think in this sort of way, and then to learn this via distance without having someone really talking to me about it was quite difficult. But that was difficult. However, I just really, really also loved the paper that April taught about advanced Māori planning, mana tau. It was just beautiful. And for me, it was kind of life-changing at the time, because my wife is a Taiao, Indigenous Taiwanese. And so we were going into the communities quite a lot for research for my wife's work as an artist. And that was a really beautiful kind of connection to bring learnings from planning, but put them into a different context. So into, you know, engagement with rural communities, but also to, as a because sorry, I didn't introduce myself very well. I'm Pākehā, and I grew up in the Waikato and Kirikiriroa, so Hamilton. And I think what April's paper had, the Mana Tau paper, really gave an amazing insight into how to kind of step back and then look at yourself. And as a Pākehā, kind of, I had never really looked through my history, and the courses that we took, the assignment that we did within the course, where we had a creative component, and we had to sort of trace our ancestry and connect it to the land, a chosen land. I found this to be really incredibly helpful for me to kind of ground myself back to Aotearoa, and at the same time to connect to my ancestry and Pākehā and how those sorry, I think it's too early in the morning for me, but I'm not making sense. Yeah, like just how as Pākehā, and then as an outsider working with Māori or Indigenous groups, but also yeah, I think I will stop there because my morning time brain is but I also I found that the course, so I did there's 3 core papers. There's the law paper, which I found difficult. There was the theory paper, which I thoroughly enjoyed, because I think that really fit into what I'm interested in, the research, the reading. Theory is really my thing. I really like this aspect of the course. And I really also, like Mahalia, enjoyed the practical paper, the core paper, to learn what planning does involve as a practitioner. That was really important. And then I also took the building resilient communities. The paper wasn't brilliant, loved it, because I'm really interested in that side of to build resilient communities. I'm interested in this space. And then I also took the urban planning paper, and that was what ultimately led me to my research. So I think the electives for me were really important. Yeah.
Yeah, no, don't worry if the coffee hasn't kicked in yet. I totally get where you were at in terms of explaining it, and I think everybody comes from a different background. Everybody comes from a different place, and especially in the place that you were at, COVID, in over in another country, but then studying and really connecting back to New Zealand through that paper would have been really healthy for you, and it just really soul warming, for lack of a better word. You know, being overseas, being in that isolated environment, and then connecting and having something quite meaningful come from a course. Probably pleasantly surprising for you. And you look, sometimes hindsight, you kind of go, wow, that was really meaningful, and that was really what I needed at the time. So no, that was really great that, for both of you, Mahalia, you as well, going through your own personal journey and study, and life doesn't stop when you start study, right? So you still, but to be able to kind of find joy and find motivation and inspiration from these papers, obviously maybe not the legal or the law paper, that probably didn't
I think some people
warm your soul as much.
Yeah, I kind of didn't mind the law paper, like,
I did it.
But, different, this is
each their own.
Yeah.
Julie, would it be a spoiler alert if I because I read all the way through to your story and what you're planning to potentially maybe do in Melbourne? Is that a little bit of a spoiler, or would you feel comfortable
of course not.
talking about, because I found that really interesting, because you talk about resource and environmental planning, and you kind of think, and you hear the word environment, and you think it's all just about kind of what we were talking about with climate change or water shortage or all the environmental things, but the urban planning side of it, I think a lot of people don't really know what you can do with that in big city, inner city, and in that space around planning that doesn't necessarily pertain to those core environmental things. And that's kind of what you're doing. So would you be able to share a little about that? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think because I have lived in big cities, and I've always been interested in cities, and the reason I took the environmental planning paper was because, as I said, I have an interest in environmental factors, but also in cities, so it connects together. And the reason so I really enjoyed the research, and I want to continue this, and I really enjoyed my final research paper, and I ended up researching how to create queer-friendly cities. Well, basically looking at the challenges and opportunities to creating like inclusive queer public space. And I focused my research in Taipei, Taiwan, and I was interested in how do we, because we will ultimately, plan for a sustainable future city, but at the same time, how do we create inclusive spaces alongside that? That's my interest. And so, our time in Taiwan is coming to an end, and so we're going to move to Australia. It's ultimately for my partner's career. My wife's career as an artist there's some big projects there in Melbourne and Nam. So next year we will go there, and I am in the process of, I will hopefully be continuing my studies. So I plan to do, like a PhD basically, and continue my research in this area. Ultimately, I think for me, I really do enjoy I also am interested in policy, like Mahalia, and I think that's awesome that you went into that you're going to start your new job is so cool. Congratulations. I see myself as continuing my research because I don't feel I completed it. I feel there's so much more that needs to be done in this space particularly, and there's just not a lot of research in this area. It's really under-researched. So hopefully, and I actually, I've been wearing many hats in my past careers, and I've done a lot of teaching, so I'm quite interested in this, and I'm interested in, furthering, I guess, going down that academic track. So a different path, I guess. Yeah.
And Julia,
and I had so much encouragement from my incredible supervisor, Imran, and yeah, I really think that the staff were really encouraging, and everything, like all the readings we were given and everything like that, they all fed into my research. And I just really, there's so much time put and energy put into providing a really cohesive overview of what planning is, but it's so big. So there's so many avenues you can go down. And so that's why I think the electives are really important, because they really shaped my path and what I was ultimately ending up interested in, because I didn't envision doing my research in that area until I got to the urban planning paper. Yeah. And then Imran I believe we had a choice of what we could write about. And so then I was like, oh, okay, this is my moment.
Oh, very good, very good. And for both of you, Mahalia and Julia, looking back on it now, it's so cool to hear your stories and to hear what you've overcome and to hear where you are at now. And both of you seem to be in really good spaces, and that's really cool. But it took a lot of work. Looking back on it, is there anything for the people out there that are listening to your stories now, considering a bachelor or a master's, but they have these apprehensions or these, a lot of times there's that fear of the unknown, and maybe I haven't studied for 2 or 3 years and I'm thinking about going back in. Were there any apprehensions that you had that weren't as bad as you thought, or any kind of, I know writing, somebody mentioned, I think Julie, maybe you mentioned all the writing that's involved. Is there anything where you look back on it now and you go, actually it wasn't that bad, or actually there's these supports that were there that helped me overcome that? What advice would you give to somebody who's kind of second guessing themselves, or maybe just a little bit nervous and anxious as well about starting their journey?
It was the writing. I was not confident at all with the writing aspect of going back into study. I just didn't have the confidence that I could write an essay. And then it took me a long time to realize that, oh no, I can write and it's okay. It's not bad. And there's so much support. I used every single time. I used the Massey assistants, like where they read your, I don't know if they do this anymore, but where they read your essay and they kind of provide you with the feedback. Yeah, that was really good. And I really read through all the comments from whoever's reading the marker. Yeah, they give really good. And then it kind of builds your confidence slowly. And I think, coming from a different discipline, a different background, coming from a career where you don't write much, and then going into this type of study where you do write a lot, you don't, it's not as bad as you think. Yeah, the writing is actually really fun and enjoyable, and I never in my life would have imagined all the masters that I would be wanting to keep writing, but I really enjoy it.
Yeah, obviously considering the PhD, you'll definitely. And Mahalia, and for you, Mahalia, anything that looking back on it you thought actually wasn't?
So funnily enough, I came out, like when I went into university, I was very perfectionist and grades focused. So I come from high school, was like a high academic achiever, and then came into university and was wanting to like crack A's, B pluses on everything and all that kind of stuff. And I did pretty well, but over the period of my course, I kind of that's not really the point, because it doesn't matter what you get in terms of grades. It matters what you get out of your paper. So what are the lessons you're actually taking from what you're learning, and how are you, even the lesson of managing your study in and of itself, and how you learn about yourself as a learner. because it's a very, very different environment to the more sort of structured, rigid environments of high school, right, that you come out of. And so, yeah, those were kind of the expectations that were a bit different from me. And I did quite appreciate learning how to reach out for help when I needed help. So that happened. I needed to reach out for help, and eventually, it took me a while to learn that, to learn, hey, you can ask for help, and also people aren't going to be eggs about it. They're going to be really supportive. But then eventually you learn, ask for help in advance, and then you're set up to do as best as you can. Yeah, so that's probably the experience I had. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like learning how to learn, learning how to study.
Yeah, learning how to study and kind of navigate the structures of the uni and what's there and what you can pull on. Yeah.
How to like read quickly and read academic articles.
Oh,
yeah.
Mate. Yeah.
Like once you get it, you've got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. It's not that intimidating. Yeah.
No.
And so, Mahali, did you might have mentioned this, but just to clarify for those listening, did you study a little bit by distance and also on the Palmerston North campus, a few campuses on the campus?
Yeah, so I did my planning courses primarily on site, and then a couple of my Māori studies classes I did via distance. It was really good. I got a couple of folders that I actually think I still have, about that big, full of materials, which is awesome. I love materials. I like to come away with something that I can refer back to. And also the teachings in those Māori study courses I really appreciated and have forwarded on to some of my other mates, to just kind of go like, read about that if you don't know about XYZ. But yeah, those were really helpful. I don't think, I'm trying to think of what the online learning environment, it was pretty interactive. Like there was a lot of encouragement from our Māori tutors to engage in the online forums, to build study groups, to ensure that we're checking in, ticking off our stuff regularly, because that's something that I struggle with when I'm studying distance, is not checking in enough, whereas if I've got the classes and I've got the prompt kind of weekly to do the thing. But yeah, I found the resources that were sent out to us really, really helpful, really great, really thorough, and comprehensive. So yeah.
Very good. And Julie, for yourself, obviously studying overseas, the distance was the only option.
Yeah. I didn't get any papers sent to me, obviously. That's not not practical. But I found I could access everything online. Digitally. It was fine. And I didn't, because of the pandemic, I didn't go back for any block courses. So the block courses were online, and I think that I would have benefited from being in person. And obviously that won't be an issue going forward anyway. So I think we've come out of quite a unique period, and I studied during a very unique period of time. So and my exams were all they were quite difficult because of the timing and things like this, but that's totally unique because I'm in a different time zone. So I think these kind of challenges that I had via distance wouldn't be a problem going forward. Unless someone is studying in a different time zone, then you have to organize your time, and it can be isolating. And then you have a lot of the courses, you do have ability to communicate with people through online forums. However, at the same time, because you don't meet that person in person, then I didn't really feel as comfortable to share as much. I mean, I'm a very open person, so I probably did share more. But yeah, I think meeting people face to face is really nice. Even if it's by distance, and in the block course situation, would have been good, because that was what I did find challenging.
Sure. Yeah. And that's fair enough. April, would you be able to just share, this might be a good segue to share the structure of the master's program and the distance component and you know, as a lecturer, what the engagement's like to students, and yeah, if you could speak to a little bit about the structure of it.
Yeah, well, Julia explained what it is. So, so just to kind of, I suppose, show the difference between the BRP, the undergraduate degree, and the master's degree. So, the undergraduate program is 31 courses, but the master's program is 7. So there are 3 core courses, which Julia talked about. There's law, theory, and professional practice. So that's kind of like the spine of the MRP. And then in terms of the bones or the electives, there are a number of choices. So there's, I think it's natural hazards and resilient communities.
Yes.
Yep. There's an urban planning and transport planning combined course, which Professor Imran Mohammed, beautiful colleague, and previously the head of the planning program, teaches. Natural resource policy, which will be taught by Martin Cartagena next year. And I think he taught the natural hazards and resilient communities course when you took it, Julia. Yes. So yeah, another just beautiful kayako, and very skilled. Manataiao Advanced Māori Planning, which is the course I teach. So yeah, so there's a selection of electives. There's also in both the BRP and the MRP a research paper. So so Julia's talked about her research, which she initiated in that course 890. It's a double semester course. You do a research project under supervision by someone who you select, and Julie had an excellent supervisor in Imran who has encouraged her to go on to PhD study, and we're so super stoked that she is, and we hope that she'll do it at RMIT with Professor Libby Porter. And also just to say that that's and that will take Julia into on an academic pathway, and she will be fabulous there. And also in the undergraduate program, the BRP students also do a research paper, and Mahalia did an excellent project on how planning provides for takatapui well-being. And I just wanted to throw over to you, Mahalia. Could you tell us a little bit about your research, please? Oh, you're on mute, Ihua.
Yeah, sure, no worries. And just a me to Julia too for doing more research in this space, because when you were saying, you know, there's just not a lot out there. Yeah, I feel you. And I was doing my lit review, like almost nothing in New Zealand, almost. And so yeah, my research topic was my question was, does planning provide for takatapui well-being? Takatapui, for those who are unfamiliar with the term, being an inclusive rainbow term for rainbow Māori, so any rainbow Māori, gender, sexuality, so on. So and I identify as takatapui, so I was uniquely sort of interested in the space, and recognised that we didn't. I think we maybe touched a little bit on queer planning in one of the planning theory courses. There was a paper on it, but outside of that, there just kind of wasn't a lot out there. And so I did my honours project. I also had an amazing supervisor. It was April. She was great. She was brilliant. And it's quite a journey, the research. Like it's quite it was really cool to do it at an undergrad level, I'll say, because it was kind of like learning to research. So it was like baby's first research paper. So like you get a lot of support to learn how to research at later levels, which I really appreciated, because it was relatively forgiving in terms of navigating that research space. And yeah, so you learn how to do your lit review, how to shape up your question. I'll say I probably bit off a lot more than a big bite, but you know, whatever. It's done. We got through it, who cares? And so, you know, I really loved the literature review part because I got to see what was out there, what was the current thinking out there, you know, and there is thinking out there. You know, I think that was one of the coolest things. There's a lot of queer planning literature out there. It's a lot of it's not New Zealand. There's a little bit in the geographic or geography space, but a lot of it's sort of overseas in the States.
America?
Yeah, the States, and I found a couple in the Middle East, I think, randomly, like a couple random ones, but yeah, mainly in America. But yeah, it was a really interesting study of how our current planning or current plans, or whether or not they do, provide for basically intersectionality, right? Specifically for groups who are probably very vulnerable. If you look at the statistics exclusively. And so, yeah, you go through, you look at the literature, then you frame up your methodology, then you go out and you do your research, and then you write up your conclusion and report. And all along that, you switch and change. So you learn a new thing, and then you have to change direction maybe, and you learn a new thing and you have to change direction, or something doesn't work out, maybe you can't interview the person you want to, so you have to change the way you're doing things. But it's a flexible course to allow for that, and you have the support of your supervisor to help you to shift your focus as you go along. It's a really challenging exercise, but it didn't put me off research. Certainly didn't. It made me want to go out and do more research, because seeing what was out there drove me to want to look more into what could be out there, and examine the issue more widely. Anything else you want me to talk about? That's about it.
Kia ora, tēnā koe.
Kia ora.
And tēnā kōrua. And just to say that, yeah, so the research course is a double semester for both the undergraduate level and the postgrad level. Is an undergraduate course, and it's the last course in your degree. And so, yeah, so when you finish that, you know, you've finished. I wondered if I could just sort of say something. Oh, because I see that we've got 8 minutes, Derek.
Yes, yeah.
Where do you want to go just in the last time?
The only thing that I kind of had left is careers, like what career options. We've obviously heard from Mahalia and Julia, some of the things that they're into these days. What other careers and what are some of the opportunities on the as somebody finishes a BRP or MRP?
Yeah, just as you know, Julia was just demonstrated, it's so wide. You can really do anything. You can stay in planning. So for example, Mahalia talked about cutting her teeth as a consents planner, or you can move outside of planning. So again, Mahalia has moved into the Crown Māori relations space at a really interesting time given the election. And then you know, Julia is now will be embarking on a PhD and going on an academic pathway. Yes. And then the market, I want to say to all of the tauira who are listening, or potential tauira who are listening, is that the market is so good right now. Yeah. So maybe, I don't know, 10 or so years ago, it wasn't. You couldn't get a job, but now just, you know, I get approached all the time as the program coordinator from consultancies and also from councils saying, we can't find anybody, we can't find anybody. So... And most, if not all, of our graduates will have jobs before they complete. So yeah, the market is excellent.
There's a lot of poaching emails coming through, messages coming through LinkedIn. Hello, we noticed you're a planner. Are you interested in changing your job? But yeah, it's really hot. It's a hot market at the moment.
Yeah, good. Now, April, whatever else you would like to share, the floor is yours. That you've got the mic. I'll just.
Well, perhaps I'll just. Do just a little bit of a wrap up, and just as Julia and Mahalia have been talking and sharing their amazing stories, I was just sort of thinking about paths, sort of serendipitous perhaps paths into the both programs. And actually, I was wondering, so you know, Mahalia, you talked about how you were a receptionist and you sort of had the sense that people that your iwi, that Ngātauri really needed people in this planning space, and then Julia, you were in a design space and then moved into development studies. How did you even find out about the BRP and the MRP? Did you come to one of these, or how did it happen?
No, I was going to do art. So funny, I was going to do something else at Massey, but then I saw the prospectus for the social and humanities one too, and I just ticked the box and was like, yeah, send that out. That was back when there was a lot of like paper mail. And yeah, they sent it out to me, and I saw it and saw the blurb and thought, oh yeah, that is a bit of me. I am interested in all of those things. So yeah.
And mine was, I guess I was doing the graduate diploma in development studies, and then I realized this is not what I want to be doing. And I studied spatial design, so I've always been interested in, I guess, designing spaces, public spaces. And I didn't really know what planning was, but I was Googling, as you do. And when I looked up the MRP, the Massey Masters of Environmental Planning, it kind of gave you this list of, these are the things that you can do, and this is what it's about. And I was like, oh, tick, 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 yes, this is all what I'm interested in, and this is what I want to do. And as long as there was a focus with urban environments, I was very interested in that, at the same time connecting to addressing environmental issues. That was how I found it. I was just looking on the Massey website as master's options. And I think because I wanted to have a career change, I wanted to completely shift out of the area I was in. And I felt it was the perfect time. And then it happened to become a pandemic. So it ended up being an even better to study. Yeah.
Good on you.
Yeah. So
challenging.
Kia ora, tēnā korua. Yeah, and I just think that once you're in, just again listening to what both of you have been saying, and just speaking to those of you who are listening out there, is that there are many ways to study. So full-time, part-time, internally, by distance, from overseas, from Palmerston North, but also from without. It's a hard road, as you heard. It takes a long time. So Julia, for you, would it have been 4 years?
I actually technically have finished and graduated, and I didn't go to the graduation. Obviously, I just did the how do you say? I don't know. You graduate via the academic committee.
And that's each year.
Yeah, something like that, which is not as fun. But it would have been 2020 to 2023, so 3 years. So I think mine was more a mix of full-time and part-time.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and hopefully we provide manaaki here, so pastoral care for our students, our tauira. But that is also what I was hearing both of you say, is that there are good services outside of the program in terms of the counselling and the student support services. So again, for our potential students who have been listening, on a personal level, something that I heard that you both say, and I hope that this is true, is that you can come here with your vulnerabilities. And you can, and you can, hopefully, we will hold a space for those. And then also, one of the things that I was really interested in hearing both of you say, because I wasn't aware of this as the program coordinator, is that your electives in the minor, though that you both really enjoyed the electives and the minor. I didn't know about that, but one of the things that I'm aware of is that I think that they make the degree more holistic. That's the purpose of them, because our degree is very structured. Also, one of the things that I will say to the students is that, and I sometimes get the sense of this from our babies, from our first years, is that they think they're going to love everything, but as both of you have said, you're not going to love everything. You're not going to love everything, and that there will be challenges along the way. There will be things that tauira need to do, There are things that we need to do as kaioko, as staff, and it's really great to get honest feedback. So, for example, one of the things that you said, Julia, was that, you know, you would have found meeting people face to face, and also in the distance environment, if we can provide that, a place for students to meet face to face, that's some feedback that I'll be taking on for my particularly my postgrad course. Also, a couple of things that I picked up from what you were both saying, and I hope, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, but what I saw in both of you was just this incredible fortitude. It's just incredible fortitude on the road, and just incredible insightfulness about yourselves as people. And it's just so beautiful to see you complete and then go out and just make these contributions to the world. And that's really our hope for you, is that you have, for our tauira and both of these programs, is that you have a good experience with us and with Massey. And then you go out and you make a contribution. Make the world a better place.
Thank you. Thank you, April.
Thank you, April.
Yeah.
That's all from me.
Oh no, thank you, April. Appreciate that, and I second that. I have really enjoyed listening to Mahalia and Julia, both of you, tell us about your journeys and where you're at now. And I wish you all the best, Mahalia. I wish you all the best in your new role there in Wellington. I hope you continue to settle in well. And Julia, all the best with what's going over in Zurich, and then your travels back to Taipei, and then potentially a move to Melbourne. I can't keep up, but I hope I got that right.
In March. Yeah. So.
Yeah, but yeah, safe travels to you, and I hope I hope your exhibit goes really well over there in Zurich. And thank you for waking up at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Actually, still on Taipei time, so the time zone. So that's my secret.
No, we really do appreciate both of you making time with your busy schedules and everything that you've been going through the last couple of days. So yeah, thank you very, very much. And to anybody else out there listening still and still on there, the email that I sent this link to, feel free to email any of the questions that you have after this session. You can email those questions through to me, and I will get it to people that can answer those questions. So yeah, do feel free to email me at the email address that you got the link to this webinar. And yeah, that's it from me. Thank you again, Mahalia and Julia, and thank you, April, for joining in there in Palmy. And my sincere apologies, April. We were going to open this session with a karakia and close with all the technical issues and trying to get Julie on, and then I just went straight into it, and I do apologize for not opening. But yeah,
I can close if you like.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, because I do apologize.
Yeah. Well, tēnā koe, Derek. Thank you for facilitating the kōrero. Thank you to Mahalia and to Julia for joining us this evening, and for the beautiful kōrero, for sharing with us your lived experience of doing our programs. Thank you to those manuhiri who have been listening to the conversation, and to you, Deb, also for looking after the comms, and to Tui for keeping everything on the tech side running smoothly. E mihi ana tēnei kia koutou katoa. Māku te karakia whakakapi e tuku. So good night, everybody. I'll close with karakia. And good morning to you, Julia. So this karakia is about stitching together all of the kōrero that we've heard tonight from our beautiful speakers, and carrying that kōrero, taking that kōrero with us, and inspiring us to go forward. Nā reira, tuia I runga, tuia I raro, tuia I roto, tuia I waho, tuia te kupu, tuia te kōrero, tuia te mātauranga, a kuima, a koroma, tuia, kia tīna, haumie, huie, tai ki e. Kia ora. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you.
Thank you.